Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we are going to take a look at using Black Legion contrast paint, the new contrast paint, and Pylar Glacier. And the original question on the previous videos was using these colors on top of this metallic base. So we're get things started. We're going to use Black Legion, a little bit of contrast medium. Now normally I would use the paint straight out of the pot, but this time I'm going to use the thinner first, just to demonstrate just a little bit of proof of concept. We're going to take a fairly generous amount into the bristles. I'm using a medium shade brush to mix this and apply onto the model. After it is thoroughly mixed, again, it's more of a 1-to-1 ratio. It's probably more medium than it is contrast. We're going to try to avoid a lot of the little plasma coils, but otherwise we're going to apply this over the entirety of the plasma gun or Hellblaster rifle, whatever the heck this gun's called. You can see here how I'm applying it fairly generously. Again, this medium shade brush holds a lot of color, so when you are moving this around, you really don't have to draw any more paint into the bristles. You can pretty much just move the excess around. You can see there's a fairly heavy amount right below the coils. So really quickly, I just wipe the brush off and I'm going to draw that excess off that surface because I don't really want it to be that dark quite yet. So again, you can always draw that out. Now, what we basically did there is what I'm going to show next, which is kind of like feathering. And as luck would have it, I am going to demonstrate feathering for you all, just so that you guys can kind of see different uses for contrast paint and colors like contrast paints, not just specifically contrast paints, but colors that act like this. So once it's dry, you can see how a thinned out Black Legion, I actually think this is a little bit different from Black Templar contrast. Black Templar contrast feels a little bit on the browner side, whereas this feels much more dark. Here I'm taking Black Legion straight from the pot, applying it with a number 2 brush, which is just a fine point brush, and then really quickly here I'm going to use that medium shade brush, cleaned, but I'm going to feather off the paint and it's going to create a slight gradient below. And this is kind of like if we were going to go for, I don't know, a bit of a non-metallic metal kind of look. Now, the faster you work, you'll have less instances of little tide marks. That's like a little, like the little tide marks where you get a little line of color where where it starts to dry at the outer edges. As long as you're fairly fast, you can avoid making that. Here I end up leaving a little tide mark right on this little spot. Really, I should have probably covered the entire area before using this larger brush to pull it off. You can see there's a slight little tide mark. I do end up going over a couple of these areas again just to push those values a little further. I don't demonstrate it on camera, but it's the same technique. It's just I'm pushing it a little bit further. And then here I'm using the pure color on the highest points of the gun just for visual aesthetic. And again, so the deeper color is up higher onto the weapon and it gets a little bit brighter down below. And then of course, if we follow this up with a little edge highlight, that would get us our non-metallic metal look using metals. I'm going to use ceramite white. I'm going to add a drop of contrast medium rather than lamine medium, just for helping with the flow. And this is probably more like a 1-to-1, but more paint than thinner. And here you can see I'm using a finer brush to apply into the little coils. And this is just so that we are going to use the Pylar Glacier. And this is after 2 layers. And I'm going to use Pylar Glacier here, and we're going to paint these coils. I'm going to use contrast medium. I'm going to use 2 drops. And now Pylar medium or Pylar Glacier is a fairly thin paint already. Just be warned. But I'm going to mix this roughly a 1-to-1, but it's more medium than it is paint. And I'm going to build up this transition because I wasn't 100% sure how this would go. And on camera, it is barely noticeable. And to the eye, it was noticeable, but on camera here, because under the lights, like the white just really kind of washes out all the little blue values. But again, it's very, very subtle. And actually, that is actually a good thing if you want to build a slight gradient on these details. So again, you can always come in with pure Pylar Glacier, hit that plasma coil, and that should be enough to give you a convincing plasma glow look. Here I'm slowly building up to it just to demonstrate the proof of concept, so to speak. This is just a demonstration. And here I'm going to use a little bit more of the Pylar Glacier, and I'm painting, applying this basically at the corner where, you know, obviously the side and the top meet at that little corner. I'm applying more color at the top, but I'm allowing a little bit more of that white to remain closest to the main body of the gun. And that's going to give us our gradient and give us that look that it is glowing, as it were. Once that's dry, you can see here, that's basically just the thinned out Pylar Glacier. And that was 2 layers essentially on the very top. Along the bottom is mostly white, pretty much just white at that, where at the bottom line of that little detail. We're going to take pure Pylar Glacier and apply it again over that corner and the top. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to push more of this color towards one end of the detail just to give, I don't know, sort of a gradient of color. And also, when you are doing this, you can also feather this out, kind of like what I demonstrated earlier with the black on the main body of the gun. And in fact, using that kind of technique on these kinds of details and around the miniature itself is a great way to create transitions fairly quickly. The further you work them and the further you build them up, the greater the gradient you will build, but in a pinch and just kind of doing it really quickly, for tabletop, it'll look fantastic. People will think you spent hours on it. Asurmen blue, new Citadel contrast. We're going to use some contrast medium, 2 drops. 2 drops? Yeah, 2 drops. And then just a little bit of the Asurmen blue. Asurmen? Anyway, give that a thorough mix. Again, it's closer to a 1-to-1, but it's probably more medium than it is paint. Very little on the brush. I turned it into a bit of a chisel here just to try and catch the high points of the plasma, like the high points of the coils, as it were. And I'm basically only applying this on the top portion of the plasma coils, also building out towards the that corner where the side meets the top portion, right? And here, really quickly, I also just kind of feather some of the color out because it was looking a little too intense. Now, to the eye, it looked fairly intense with the blue. On camera here, it really doesn't. And it actually looks okay on camera here. And to the eye, it actually looks a lot better. But again, it's because, you know, obviously the bright lights and everything like that. But also, when you are going to do something like this, a plasma glow on a model, you definitely want to have the gun be a darker color. Because if you go with a brighter color for the main gun itself, some of the effect gets kind of lost. But after we've done that Asurmen blue, we let it dry, and then we come in with another layer. And again, I'm just going to build a little bit more, and I'm actually going to push this closer towards the back end of the gun. Again, I've turned it into a chisel just to help me, you know, basically just control where I'm laying some of this color. And I'm trying to catch some of these high points. It's a little easier with a thicker opaque color to catch those high points. And I also have another video on using contrast as well as opaque colors, painting plasma glow, which I'll link up in the upper portion of the video there. You can go ahead and check those videos out on achieving a plasma glow fairly quickly. Kind of like this, but just a little bit more explanation in it. But that is it, essentially. That's a plasma glow using Pylar Glacier and Asurmen blue. The Black Legion was to just demonstrate, you know, obviously creating a gradient on a gun, and also its coverage on top of metallics. And you can see it covers very well. On the highest points of the gun, you can see it's almost pure black. It almost looks like we used what's the black? Abaddon black? I almost said Chaos black, but anyway. That is it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. This is a lot of fun, and hopefully this helps you out. And again, check out those other tutorials. Big thank you to my patrons. Without your support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below. And a huge thank you to all my patrons for their continued support and all the brand new ones. Take care of your brushes, and they will take care of you.